Two Grenadiers in Suzuki Volume 2. I really enjoy teaching this piece. It's one of my very favorite beginner pieces to teach because I feel out of everything sequentially in Suzuki Book 1 and Book 2. It's the first time we actually have a little bit of a story to discover here. And what I mean by that is there seems to be different scenes going on, different moods. And of course, because the key signature changes halfway through, that's a really good indication. It's basically going from a minor mode to a major mode. So it starts out in D minor and goes to D major. So as soon as the student has learned the basics, they have the pitches correct, the rhythms correct, then I like to talk about what they want to convey with this piece. So it's a chance to talk about being more expressive. It's a chance to challenge them to use the techniques that I've taught them, the bowing techniques, left hand techniques. So everything kind of comes together in this piece. So basically, I want to take you through what I usually teach, in this piece. The technical side of it is basically what I do is I start them off at the moderato. So that's pick up to measure 23. And so that's in the major mode. It's a bit easier to start. The rhythms are not as complicated, and the finger positions are a lot easier. We have some high twos, we have some low twos. In the beginning, we have to deal with low ones, and up until now, the student hasn't done too many of those. So, this is preceded by waltz and bourrée, and none of those use the low first finger. So often I will teach probably the bourrée, and then if they've learned it, sometimes I also skip the bourrée, the handle bourrée, and then I will go to one of these pieces. So I might teach them Witch's Dance next, and then Two Grenadiers. It depends on the situation. So I teach them the second half first. So it starts out in this area here with the reiteration of that. And so that part's pretty easy. So that might be a nice little pre-study moment there where you just teach them that phrase, and you have them practice it 10 times or something like that. And then another preview I do in this is going to be measure 32. It has the dotted rhythm in there. So measure 32 is nice because it's on an E string. So we have, so I take those 4 E's and I just box it literally with my pencil, and I tell them to practice that 10 times or more until they perfect it. So what that does is it gives them a chance to play the dotted 8th note 16th group, and I believe that is also the first time that they see that in the Suzuki Volume 1 and 2, and it helps them to concentrate on the bow. So I try to encourage them to use a full bow on the quarter note, and then almost a full bow on the up bow, and then the next one is tucked in together with the following. So there's like a little. So if that's difficult for the student, I usually just have them start here, tell them to have a little bit of room here, and then I do a quick up, and it rebounds back to the down bow right away. So that's kind of fun to practice, and then we reverse, go back, and then we add the first 2. So I say 2 long notes, and then there's a little left over here, and then you put the 2 together. So it sounds kind of like ta-da! So it's important to have those 2 kind of linked together. Visually, it's a bit disturbing because it looks like that quick note is attached to the note before, but actually, as a violinist, we want to attach that note to the following note. So this little guy is connected to this long note that I just played. They practiced that several times. There's another one following that in 2 measures later with the F sharp. the words I use for that rhythm are blue, purple, blue. So I tell them to say blue, purple, blue. And so that usually takes care of that quarter note and the dotted rhythm combination. Once they are pretty comfortable with that, I might talk about the retakes, the lifts. So there's a few, in the fortissimo moment. So we're gonna retake that to the frog, and then that's right before the last statement of the theme. So that sort of takes care of the bottom portion of it, and so maybe the week after or 2 weeks after, then we might, once it's pretty good, we might go to the first portion. So then, we talk about the low one position. So I ask them to, pull their one back. This is a really good chance, a good time to incorporate the scales, any scales that incorporate a low one. So you might play an F major scale, just one octave, and just to give them a chance, just to give them a chance to get used to that low one. What I usually do is have them put their one on the tape, and then I tell them to rock backwards. So watch my finger here. It's gonna pull back like that, and then it's gonna come back up. So I have them do this exercise. I tell them just to stretch, just to open up this place right there and put a gap. And so that's a great way to start. And then the other thing we want to remind them is that when the one goes away, one is kind of the foundation. So if one moves, then the other fingers start to feel a bit strange, and they lose their bearings a bit. So when the one goes back, the three feels like it has to stretch up. So there's a little bit of disorientation there, and then you just get used to it. Anytime you just played a low one, you just remind yourself to go a little higher on the three. The three doesn't, change position, but because the one moves, see, now the three feels like it's a high three, but it actually isn't. I also recommend keeping the thumb in the same place. So whether you're playing a regular one, you see my thumb over there, or my low one, my thumb doesn't move. That helps to keep the hand frame nice and keep everything in tune, all the fingers in tune there. So so then we just start the first phrase, and then so we usually stay on just that group of notes for a little while until they feel really comfortable with it, until the fingers and the notes sound in tune. The reason why that section is absolutely crucial is because once you start putting it together with the piano accompaniment, it gets tricky. They really need to know, what the beats are. So I'll play that section for you just so you know. Sometimes I put the upbeat, the pickup into it. Section I'm talking about, and in that section the piano part actually has triplet rhythms, so it's like 2 against 3, and that's quite challenging for a violinist at this stage of development. So I usually try to emphasize the big beats, and then for the pianist, I play along with all my students all the time. I'm playing the piano part. If you have a pianist, then you can ask them to emphasize the left hand and keep the right hand quiet, because the right hand has the triplet motive. So so that's a good way to solve that rhythmic challenge there. And actually that's my favorite section because it just really sounds like kind of tumultuous there. So in the beginning, it sounds like kind of like a march. Obviously the title's Two Grenadiers, so it sounds like the the army or the battalion is marching into war. And then there's a bit of kind of unclarity, in the middle section. And then it seems to start to pick up, like the energy level is getting a bit more upbeat. That's the piumoso. And the rhythms become a bit more clear, especially in the piano part. And then the moderato, of course, that comes from the French national anthem. And so it sounds like a victory call or a victory song, like a celebration. But there's this one little melancholy section in the middle of that. With a little bit of militaristic, hints in there. So I actually have my own personal story. I tell all my students when we get there, it's like a special moment. I ask my students to come up with a story themselves. And then I tell them what my story is, and they really enjoy that. So, but before we talk about story, we always make sure that we've either played it with the piano accompaniment or they've listened to the recording with the piano accompaniment. That's very important because in my opinion, the harmonic progression really informs the interpretation. So they're going to get lots of clues, and I believe the piano part is really going to fuel their imagination and creativity. So then, the places where they want to play very strong, we talk about getting a brighter color or like a horn, what a brass instrument might sound like. And so, I'll tell them to play near Highway 2 and give it a little bit more power. And then for the agitato section, so we can go and get this fluffy sound over here in Highway 5. So, we talk about highways and interpretation, and that's really how I teach dynamics. I don't just say, here's a P, play soft, here's an F, play loud. To me, it's not very creative. And anyway, when you compare fortes across the board, they're not all the same. They have different colors, they have different moods. So a forte in this part of the piece or in that part of the piece might not be the same kind of forte, or a forte in this piece by Robert Schumann might be different from a forte in a Mozart sonatina or something. So you just really want to spark the students' imagination, their curiosity, and their interest. And so I really enjoy this piece for that purpose. And which is dance has a little bit too, but most of it's pretty cut and dried. And then there's that middle section that's a bit soft, a metamoso. That area becomes a little bit different. The scales being used are different. And so there are spots in other pieces, but I think the next big landmark would be the humoresque in Suzuki Book 3. And again, I have a very special story for that. And so I feel every 2 lines in that humoresque piece shows a different scene or a different action, happening. So it's a lot of fun. I really encourage you to take certain opportunities as a teacher, if you're a teacher, to just kind of stop and enjoy what artistic elements certain pieces in the literature have to offer.